So this is the beginning of narration of um a pastime of Lord Shiva that is filled with lessons for all of us. Here, Daksha, who we saw, such a great personality from whom all these glorious descendants were coming forth. Like we talked about the 16 um, daughters of Daksha, and how as the daughters were married with great sages, really an exalted generation of um, sages and saintly personalities were coming out. So Daksha was such a great personality, but the same personality here is turning out to exhibit strong envy towards his son-in-law, Lord Shiva. And therefore, this section is filled with lessons for all of us. So this whole description started when Vidura inquired about Sati, or Lord Shiva's consort, her strange death, like why she had to give up her body. So that actually put Vidura into a mood of inquiry before Maitreya. And therefore, Maitreya started narrating the events that led up to that. And the whole description is taking us into a sacrifice that is happening at a universal level. And so fourth verse gives a good summary of the sacrifice that is getting held. So a great sacrifice performed by the leaders of the universal creation, namely Marichi, Daksha, and Vashishta. These great personalities arranged for a great sacrifice, for which demigods like Indra and the fire gods assembled with their followers. So Prabhupada introduced the sacrifice in that particular purport. And verse number 2 purport is where Lord Shiva is being glorified. And we can also learn some good summary description from the purport. So Lord Shiva, who is considered to be the spiritual master of the entire world, is free from enmity, is a peaceful personality, and is always satisfied in himself. And he is the greatest among the demigods. So the specific phrase that is used is Daivatam Mahat, or Mahadeva, right? So Lord Shiva is commonly referred to as Mahadeva because he is the greatest among the demigods. Krishna is referred to as Deva Deva, who is the god of all gods. So in this way, there is a slight distinction pointed out just within the name itself. So Prabhupada is writing in the purport, Lord Shiva is described here as Chara Chara Guru. So Chara means that which moves. Achara means that which does not move. So Lord Shiva is described as the Guru of both Chara and Achara, the spiritual master of all animate and inanimate objects. He is sometimes known as Bhutanath, which means the worshipable deity of the dull-headed. Bhuta is sometimes taken to indicate the ghosts. Lord Shiva takes charge of reforming persons who are ghosts and demons, not to speak of others who are godly. Therefore, he is the spiritual master of everyone. So this is the understanding of Chara Chara Guru. So in other words, Achara is indicating those who are dull-headed, and Chara is indicative of those who are sharp, or those whose intelligence is moving. Therefore, he is the spiritual master of everyone, Prabhupada is writing, both the dull and the demoniac and the highly learned Vaishnavas. Such a beautiful description of Lord Shiva. It's also stated Vaishnavanam Yatha Shambhu. Shambhu, Lord Shiva, is the greatest of all Vaishnavas. On one hand, he is the worshipable object of the dull demons, and on the other, he is the best of the Vaishnava, best of all Vaishnavas or devotees. And he has a sampradaya called the Rudra Sampradaya. So Rudra Sampradaya begins with Krishna imparting the Vedic knowledge to Rudra, and the disciplic succession moves forward from there onwards. It's also important for us to note this, that Lord Shiva is always referred to as the greatest of all Vaishnavas. So therefore, the quality of Vaishnava, which is Paradukha Dukhi, or one who becomes really distressed at others' distress, that quality is presented in the most magnified form in Lord Shiva, that he is willing to go to an extreme extent to extend himself to the most lowly personalities, like as it is pointed out, the dull and the demoniac, the ghosts and the demons. So he reaches out to those whom others are scared to even go near. So that is the glory of Lord Shiva. He is the greatest among all the Vaishnavas, and therefore his compassionate nature is just outpouring from his personality. So even if he is an enemy or is sometimes angry, such a personality cannot be the object of envy. So Vidura, in astonishment, asked why he was taken as such, especially by Dakṣa. And it is also pointed out in the same purport that Dakṣa is also not an ordinary person. He is a Prajapati in charge of fathering population, and all his daughters are highly elevated, especially Sati. The word Sati means the most chaste. Whenever there is a consideration of chastity, Sati, this wife of Lord Shiva and the daughter of Dakṣa, is considered first. Vidura was therefore astonished. Dakṣa is such a great man, he thought, and is the father of Sati, and Lord Shiva is the spiritual master of everyone. How then could there possibly be so much enmity between them, that Sati, the most chaste goddess, could give up her body because of their quarrel? So such an important sort of turning point that has to be understood how this is happening. So here is the scene. The scene is that as the leaders of the universal creation, they are gathered for this universal level sacrifice. Dakṣa enters the scene, or enters the sacrificial arena. And he was, as described, he was very powerful and as effulgent as the sun. And just because of his aura, all those present, the sages, the demigods, the fire gods, even the fire gods, they immediately stood up in respect. Now, of course, one person who doesn't need to stand up is Dakṣa's own father, which is Lord Brahma. So Lord Brahma, who is also the president of the sacrifice that is getting performed, he also greeted Dakṣa and invited him to a seat of honor. So much respect was offered to Dakṣa when he entered the scene. But Dakṣa's attention goes to only one person, and that is Lord Shiva, who was also present, but Lord Shiva was in such a meditative trance that he did not even notice that Dakṣa had entered the scene. He was meditating on Lord Vishnu. And therefore, he did not rise, because it's not that he was purposefully wanting to disrespect his father-in-law, but he just didn't even notice. So therefore, Lord Shiva, being in meditative trance, he just did not notice Dakṣa's entry. But Dakṣa took a great offense at this. And then Dakṣa started rebuking Lord Shiva. That's how the whole sacrifice began, with a strong cursing and vituperative words from Dakṣa, because he was feeling inside his heart a strong insult and disrespect. Although if you notice, everyone was so respectful to him, but his focus is on Lord Shiva. So he started saying that all sages, Brahmanas and fire gods present, please hear me with attention. For I speak about the manners of gentle persons. And here is the line which is very interesting. He says that I do not speak out of envy, ignorance, or envy. This is the beauty. When one is covered by ignorance, one cannot recognize that one is covered over already. So even that is the greatest personality like Dakṣa, he can also become covered like this. So Prabhupada is writing in the purport, number 9, that in speaking against Lord Shiva, Dakṣa tried to pacify the assembly by presenting in a very tactful way that he was going to speak about the manners of gentle persons. Although naturally this might affect some unmannerly upstarts, and the assembly might be unhappy because they did not want even unmannerly persons to be offended. In other words, he was in complete knowledge that he was speaking against Lord Shiva in spite of Shiva's spotless character. And this is a very important line. As far as envy is concerned, from the very beginning, he was envious of Lord Shiva. Therefore, he could not distinguish his own particular envy. Although he spoke like a man in ignorance, he wanted to cover his statements by saying that he was not speaking for impudent and envious reasons. And this is how he speaks, that Shiva has spoiled the name and fame of the governors of the universe. I mean, this section is so filled with filthy words that you kind of get scared reading this section. Because he is just blaspheming Lord Shiva left, right, and center. That Shiva has spoiled the name and fame of the governors of the universe and has polluted the path of gentle manners. Because he is shameless, he does not know how to act. He has already accepted himself as my subordinate. How? By marrying my daughter in the presence of fire and brahmanas. He has married my daughter, who is equal to Gayatri, and has pretended to be just like an honest person. He has eyes like a monkey's, yet he has married my daughter whose eyes are just like those of a deer cub. So in other words, what follows envy is this comparison, where one somehow or other wants to show how I am great and how others are so lowly. Nevertheless, he did not stand up to receive me, nor did he think it fit to welcome me with sweet words. So his heart was just filled with feelings of disrespect and insult. And now these kind of words are just coming out. So Prabhupada, in the purport number 10, its point is he's actually explaining how these so-called blasphemous words can be understood in a different way also, in a good sense. So Prabhupada is writing, the words used against Lord Shiva by Dakṣa can also be understood in a different way, in a good sense. For example, he stated that Shiva is Yashogna, which means one who spoils name and fame. So this can also be interpreted to mean that he was so famous that his fame killed all other fame. Again, Dakṣa used the word Nirapatrapa. So Nirapatrapa, which also can be used in two senses. One sense is one who is stunted, and another sense is one who is the maintainer of persons who have no other shelter. Generally, Lord Shiva is known as the Lord of the Bhutas, or lower grade of living creatures. They take shelter of Lord Shiva because he is very kind to everyone and he is very quickly satisfied. Therefore, he is called Ashutosh. Ashutosh means one who is easily pleased. Ashu means very quick. Tosha means to be satisfied. So he is ever ready to make others satisfied. To such men, one cannot approach. So to such men who cannot approach other demigods or Vishnu, Lord Shiva gives shelter. Therefore, the word Nirapatrapa can be used in that sense. And then he goes on to call, even further denigrating words, that I had no desire to give my daughter to this person who has broken all rules of civility. Because of not observing the required rules and regulations, he is impure. And I was obliged to hand over my daughter to him, just as one teaches the messages of the Vedas to a Shudra. So the word that is used in this connection, Prabhupada is writing in the 13th purport, is Bhinna Setave, which refers to one who has broken all regulations for good behavior by not following the Vedic principles. In other words, according to Dakṣa, the entire transaction of the marriage of his daughter with Śiva was not in order. And the question is that why did then Dakṣa marry Sati to Lord Śiva? So that is answered in the 16th verse, where it is pointed out that on the request of Lord Brahma, I handed over my chaste daughter to him, although he is devoid of all cleanliness and his heart is filled with nasty things. So now at this point, he is even blaspheming Lord Brahma indirectly. So Prabhupada is writing in the purport number 16 that in anger, one forgets everything. And thus, Dakṣa in anger not only accused the great Lord Shiva, but criticized his own father, Lord Brahma, for his not very astute advice that Dakṣa hand over the daughter to Lord Shiva. So we'll continue. Thank you very much. We took some more time because this is such an important section. We need to understand who this Lord Shiva is before we appreciate the whole dynamics that's going to take place.